Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, pemirsa MTATV dimanapun Anda berada. Kali ini bersama saya Aldila Farah Elmira, kita berada dalam program Inframe. Saat ini saya sudah terhubung dengan seorang jurnalis Palestina, Ummu Wafa yang akan melaporkan terkait pembunuhan jurnalis senior Al Jazeera, Shireen Abu Aqleh. Pemirsa, Al Jazeera merupakan stasiun televisi berbahasa Arab dan Inggris yang berbasis di Doha, Qatar. Kementerian Kesehatan Palestina mengabarkan wanita berusia 51 tahun tersebut tertembak saat melakukan tugasnya sebagai jurnalis meliput serangan tentara Israel di kamp pengungsian Jenin pada Rabu 11 Mei. Shireen tertembak peluru tepat di kepalanya secara brutal. Saat bertugas, Shireen sempat mengirim pesan lewat email kepada rekan kerjanya bahwa akan membawakan berita di kamp pengungsian Jenin dengan gambar yang lebih jelas. Namun pemirsa, naas justru kabar tersebut menjadi kabar kematiannya. Lalu bagaimanakah situasi terkini mengenai kasus tersebut? Saya sudah terhubung dengan Ukhti Ummu Wafa Al-Hudaini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Ukhti Ummu Wafa.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You're welcome. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, Ukhti Ummu Wafa, I will ask you about the conditions right now in Jenin, Camp Jenin. Could you tell us about the circumstances of the case that the Ministry of Health announced Shireen Abu Aqleh was hit by a live bullet in the head in the criminal aggressions of the Israeli occupation against Jenin camp?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, let me start by saying that we as Palestinian journalists, we condemn the killing or the assassination of our colleague or our fellow Shireen Abu Aqleh. Like yesterday morning, Palestine woke up to the saddest and the most shocking news ever, as yet another Palestinian journalist have been assassinated by the occupation fire. So, veteran Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Aqleh was killed while covering Israeli assault on the city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. Actually, Shireen was shot in the head and left bleeding before being transferred to the hospital. And at the very beginning, actually, it wasn't easy at all to evacuate her from the area she was with other Palestinian journalists. But a brave Palestinian man, managed to hold her, and then she was pronounced dead in the hospital. She was clearly looked as a journalist because she was wearing a helmet and a breast vest. And then it was really very clear for the Israeli occupation forces, and especially because the distance between them just 150 meters. Plus, she is a well-known and a veteran journalist. Even for the Israeli forces, I'm really sure that they know her very well. Because also she was along with other journalists, and all of them were wearing breast vest and helmets. And according to a journalist who was with her, her name is Shada Hanaisha, she was standing beside Shireen when she was shot dead. She was saying, she said to the media that they were a group of journalists, of 4 journalists, and they were in a place which was so clear to the Israeli occupation soldiers, and there were no armed people, no clashes, no confrontations, or even no throwing stones. So, but they mean to silence the Palestinian journalists here in Palestine, and they mean to kill every voice for Palestinians in order to hide the crimes and the brutality that they are doing for the Palestinian people. Okay,
so Shireen is died in the hospital, not in Jenin camp, or where?
Yeah. Yes. They shot her in the very beginning. They shot her, and she left bleeding for a few time. and then the people there tried to evacuate her from the place. But after a few time, they managed to evacuate her, and then when she reached the hospital there, she pronounced dead by the Ministry of Health.
So it's in the same day. In the same day that
and the same day, after nearly 1 hour from after being shot, or more than 1 hour, I guess,
Okay, the Ummu Wafa, can you bring us the up-to-date situation between Israeli and Palestinian? Of course, for viewers who are just joining us may not be aware of what's been happening right now.
Yes. Actually, since we are talking about occupation of Palestine, this means that every day we have violations, we have Palestinians who got murdered, who got killed, who got detained. So this is exactly what is happening at the moment. But indeed, this time or these days, there is a rising escalation from the Israeli forces, because they see that the world is really busy with the war between Ukraine and Russia. So they just seize this opportunity in order to commit more crimes against Palestinians. So nearly since this month, over than 6 Palestinians got murdered by the occupation gunfire. And also like thousands or hundreds of Palestinians got detained by the occupation by the occupation forces, because every day there is a storming and invasion to their homes and towns and villages, especially in the West Bank and occupied Jerusalem. So and even the situation in Al-Aqsa Mosque at the moment, there are Israeli settlers or fanatic Israeli settlers. They try from time to time to storm Al-Aqsa Mosque and perform their ritual prayers, and they just raise their flags, the Israeli flags, in order to provoke Palestinians, and then to because they mean to change the status quo in order to convince or to show the whole world that the Israeli authority is the one who has the power on Al-Aqsa Mosque, courtyard, and occupied Jerusalem as whole, not east and west.
Sorry, Ummu. So not only Shereen, Palestinian, not only Shereen in the Camp Jenin, or
yes,
the other Palestinian journalists?
Yes, no, and it's not a Palestinian journalist, but another Palestinian young man. He is 18 years old. Actually, he got killed in the same day, after nearly half an hour after Shereen got killed. He also got shot dead by the occupation fire. He was just in his town, and the occupation forces, they stormed his town, and they started to shoot at Palestinians who were defending themselves by throwing stones and simple weapons that they use. And then this young man got shot dead in his town, in front of his home. In the same day, and even tens of Palestinians got arrested or got detained in the same day, also yesterday. And this doesn't end, because every day, as I told you, there is a violation. So yesterday and even today, the Israeli occupation authorities, they prevent Palestinian worshippers from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray Al-Fajr prayer in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this is really, really a violation to the freedom of religion, but without any justification. They just prevent them from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque and pray Al-Fajr prayer. And from time to time, they close Al-Aqsa Mosque gates for just their justifications, that they fear there is something or security thing. But this thing is not true, because they know that the people has nothing to defend themselves except having stones or having a knife or anything like that, but nothing more. So they keep violating the international laws, and they keep humiliating the Palestinians more and more every day.
Okay, Ummu Wafa, after the tragedy right now, is there any effort that can be made by on behalf of organizations of Palestinians journalism to protect them, or is there a limit what can be done? As we know that journalists or reporter, wherever we are, whenever we are, must be protected.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But you know, Israel doesn't know this thing indeed, because every day they violate the freedom of the press. I mean, you know that since the occupation of Palestine, nearly 100 Palestinian journalists got killed by the occupation fire, and indeed. We at this moment there are like I don't know exactly how the number of journalists who are still being held in the Israeli occupation jails for nothing but for reporting the truth from the ground. I remember that there are over than 10 Palestinian journalists, inside the occupation jails, and thousands or tens or hundreds of them got disabled, got injured by the occupation fire, and then they become disabled. And I know so many of colleagues and the friends, really they lost their legs, they lost their eyes or parts of their body because they were covering incidents or Israeli assaults on Palestinians. So they lost part of their bodies, and then they become disabled. But the most lovely thing about the Palestinian journalists is that they keep going in their profession. Nothing hinders them, even if they lose any of parts of their body. They just go on and continue in their profession and continue in showing the world the truth about what is happening on the ground and the reality from occupied Palestine.
Okay, sorry, 100 journalism in Palestine killed by Israeli occupation, right? There, do they bring press jacket or not?
Yes, of course. Most of those who got killed by the occupation fire, they were wearing clearly press vest and helmets. And then you can find like most of those journalists who got killed, they were their bodies were holding the press vest. So it was so clear, but they mean it. They mean to silence those people. They mean to let other fellow journalists in order to fear covering their brutality and covering their attacks on the Palestinian people, or showing the whole world the truth. Exactly, because you know they mean to let the whole world, or to enlighten, or to convince the whole world that Palestinians are the terrorist people and they don't deserve to live, and they want to wipe Israel from the map and this stuff. But all of these are just lies, and they want this distorted image about Palestinians to be prevailed everywhere. Because we are the landowners and we do believe in our right to live and our right as human beings in this land, that's why we keep going and we keep reporting the truth from the ground.
Do the Israeli attack their family too? I mean, Shereen family?
Yeah, you know, regarding Shireen case, actually, they killed her, and sadly, after killing her, you know, because so many people came to stand with her family, and then they raised the Palestinian flag and so on. So even after killing Shereen, they invaded her home and tried to disturb Palestinians who came to stand beside her family. And those who raised the Palestinian flag, they tried to, the Israeli soldiers tried to take the Palestinian flag from from her family. So So they do not stop after killing her, no, but after that, they don't want her family to take rest, or they want really to humiliate them and to tell them that it's your turn. If you stop exposing our brutality, where you are going to be next. Because this was said clearly by the Israeli Prime Minister Bennett. He just said it clearly that we don't care about journalists. If there is any danger for our soldiers, we ask them to shoot anybody, even if they are Al Jazeera reporters. So they just said it clearly, and they mean it. Yes.
Okay. How about the voice of freedom that reaches the whole world? Can you tell us more about it? The Palestinian voice, freedom.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah, regarding that there is violations regarding the Palestinian journalists, and they try to silence them. But there's also another thing when sometimes, because the mainstream media do not report exactly the situation here. So the Palestinian journalists and activists, they just use the social media platforms in order to enlighten the whole world about the situation. So the social media administrations, I mean, regarding Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of those social media platforms, they actually disabled or try to disable any Palestinian account whenever they see any account that shed the lights on what is happening here. They just disable his or her account completely. So we can say that the Palestinian narrative is really being attacked by even the social media platforms administrations. So we can say that there is no freedom of expressions here in Palestine. And that's why Palestinians, especially in the West, have the distorted image by, like so many in the West or outside Palestine. They don't exactly know what is happening, and they don't exactly know that the occupation are trying to distort the Palestinian people image. Because whenever they commit any crimes, then they can say that, yeah, we are just attacking terrorism, those are just terrorists, and this is a war against terrorism, and so on. But this is exactly wrong, and what is happening here in Palestine is really a severe occupation of Palestine. There was a nation, or Palestinians, and Israel was found or was established in 1948. But before 1948, there was a state, there was Palestinian. We have our own history, our own traditions and everything. But after the Jewish immigration to Palestine, they, in 1948, they just came in gangs, and then they kick out Palestinians out of their homes, and then they took their towns and their properties, and everything belonged to them. And then they were made as, the Palestinians were made refugees, and the Israelis became the most civilized persons in the world by taking something that is not theirs. And then what is called right now Israel is, in the past, was Palestine, and there were people living in these areas. I mean, my parents and grandparents were originally from these homes before Israel was established, but now me and my parents and my grandparents, we are all made refugees in our own country. So and even so many Palestinians, they lived outside Palestine and to European and Arab countries, but still they are refugees, and they really wish and dream of returning back to their homes to their occupied homes one day.
Stay with me, Ummu Wafa. The last for me, that what you want to say to all of journalism and all of the world about this tragedy?
Can you say that again, please?
What you want to say to all of the world, to all of people the world about this tragedy, especially journalism?
Yes, yes. Actually, I'm really sure what encourages the occupation of committing war crimes and committing, killing the journalists or even Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians. It's because of the silence of the world. Nobody stopped Israel from doing crimes. So that's why they got strengthened by the world, and especially by the Western world. Especially those who, aid Israel with weapons, with advanced weapons. So because of their silence, because of the world's silence, we are being killed and murdered and detained every single day. So if the world keeps silence and stop talking about Palestine, of course you are going to listen more and more crimes against the humanity here in Palestine. So I ask everybody is listening to us right now that you should keep talking, should keep speaking about Palestine, should help Palestinians in exposing the truth, in exposing the ugly face of the occupation, and try to put pressure on their governments in order to stop Israel from occupying Palestine, from committing genocide here and ethnic cleansing here in Palestine. So this is my message to the whole world, and especially for the journalists. My message to them, I just want them to, if they still don't know about the situation in Palestine, they have to come here and see by themselves and experience exactly the situation here, and then they can decide who is wrong and who is right, and who is doing the genocide and the brutality, and who is doing who is defending themselves. So if you still have doubt about the situation here, you can come here and then see by yourself the situation, and then you can report exactly the situation.
Okay, thank you so much, Ummu Wafa, for the breaking news up to date. Hope all of journalist Palestinians always in God's protections. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much.
Baik pemirsa, demikian tadi berita terkini mengenai kasus pembunuhan jurnalis senior Al Jazeera yang ditembak mati oleh tentara Israel. Adanya kasus ini membuat warga Palestina bahkan dunia mengutuk pembunuhan Shereen saat menjalankan profesinya. Diketahui Shereen merupakan kewarganegaraan Amerika Serikat yang menjadi jurnalis senior Al Jazeera, menyuarakan keadilan kemerdekaan Palestina atas Israel. Meski Perdana Menteri Israel menolak kasus tersebut, namun utusan khusus PBB Proses Perdamaian Timur Tengah, Duta Besar Amerika Serikat dan pihak-pihak terkait terus menyerukan penyelidikan atas pembunuhan Shereen hingga saat ini. Saya Aldila Farah Elmira mohon undur diri. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.